New England Patriots, 2001 to 2018. No dynasty in NFL history was longer, more controversial, or more dominant than the New England Patriots under Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. It started in 2001 when a sixth-round pick out of Michigan stepped in after Drew Bledsoe's injury. By the end of the year, Brady was holding the Lombardi Trophy, launching nearly 2 decades of control over the NFL. Across 18 seasons, the Patriots went to 9 Super Bowls, winning 6 championships. They posted 16 division titles, set the standard for regular season consistency, and reinvented themselves multiple times to stay ahead of the league. Early on, they were a defensive juggernaut built around names like Ty Law, Willie McGinest, and Teddy Bruschi. Then, in the mid-2000s, Brady evolved into an MVP quarterback, leading explosive passing attacks with Randy Moss, Wes Welker, Rob Gronkowski, and Julian Edelman. Even when personnel changed, the results didn't. The Patriots had iconic moments: the tuck rule game, Adam Vinatieri's clutch kicks, the undefeated 2007 season that ended 1 win short, Malcolm Butler's goal line interception, and the 28-3 comeback in Super Bowl 51. But what made them unique was longevity. While most dynasties last 5 to 7 years, New England stayed at the top for nearly 2 decades. They weathered controversies like Spygate and Deflategate, rebuilt rosters over and over, and kept winning. From 2001 through 2018, they were the team everyone measured themselves against. And in a league built on parity, no one has ever sustained greatness like they did. Pittsburgh Steelers, 1972 to 1979. The Pittsburgh Steelers of the 1970s were the definition of toughness and dominance in the NFL. Before this run, the Steelers had been one of the league's least successful franchises. But under head coach Chuck Noll, they drafted the core of a team that would change football forever. Terry Bradshaw at quarterback, Franco Harris at running back, Lynn Swann and John Stallworth at wide receiver. And on defense, the most feared unit in league history, the Steel Curtain. From 1972 to 1979, the Steelers won 4 Super Bowls in 6 seasons, including back-to-back championships twice, 1974 to 75 and 1976 to 77. 1978 to 1979, they became the first team in NFL history to win 4 Super Bowls, and they did it with balance. The offense evolved from Harris and the run game into one of the league's most dynamic passing attacks once Bradshaw developed. Swann and Stallworth made circus catches that defined Super Bowls, while Harris was the steady workhorse who never seemed to have a bad game. The defense, though, is what people remember most. Joe Green, Jack Lambert, Jack Ham, Mel Blount, L.C. Greenwood, Donnie Shell. The list of Hall of Famers is endless. The Steel Curtain smothered opponents, changed how passing was defended, and intimidated teams before they even took the field. The dynasty started with the Immaculate Reception in 1972, a play that seemed to mark the turning point for the entire franchise. By the end of the decade, the Steelers were the league's gold standard, and to this day, they remain the foundation of Pittsburgh's identity as the City of Champions. Green Bay Packers, 1960 to 1967. The Green Bay Packers of the 1960s were the blueprint for every dynasty that followed. Led by head coach Vince Lombardi, the Packers built a culture around discipline, execution, and perfection. Lombardi's famous quote, "Winning isn't everything, it's the only thing," defined the era, and on the field, his team backed it up. From 1960 to 1967, Green Bay won 5 NFL championships in 7 years, including the first 2 Super Bowls. They dominated with a style that was simple in concept, but flawless in execution. Lombardi's power sweep became the most iconic play of its time. Everyone knew it was coming, and no one could stop it. The roster was loaded with Hall of Famers: Bart Starr at quarterback, Paul Hornung and Jim Taylor in the backfield, Forrest Gregg and Jerry Kramer on the offensive line, Willie Davis and Ray Nitschke anchoring the defense. They won the 1961 and 1962 titles with suffocating defense and a punishing ground game. They added 3 more championships from 1965 to 1967, capped off with victories in Super Bowl I and II, cementing their place in history. Bart Starr won MVP of both games and became the face of calm excellence in clutch moments. The Packers of the 1960s built the NFL's first true dynasty, and their success set the standard for what greatness in pro football would look like. To this day, the championship trophy bears Lombardi's name, the ultimate symbol of a dynasty that defined an era. San Francisco 49ers, 1981 to 1994. The San Francisco 49ers of the 1980s and early 1990s were the NFL's dynasty of innovation and precision. It began in 1981 when head coach Bill Walsh introduced the West Coast offense, a system that changed football forever. Instead of relying on power running and deep shots, Walsh emphasized short, rhythmic passes to control the game. With Joe Montana at quarterback and Dwight Clark at wide receiver, the 49ers captured their first Super Bowl, sealed by the catch in the NFC Championship against Dallas. From there, they became the league's most complete team. Montana was cool under pressure, earning the nickname Joe Cool. He won 4 Super Bowls and never threw an interception in any of them. Jerry Rice, drafted in 1985, became the most dominant wide receiver in NFL history. Roger Craig, Ronnie Lott, Steve Young, and countless others filled out a roster stacked with Hall of Fame talent. From 1981 to 1994, they won 5 Super Bowls, with Walsh and later George Seifert on the sideline. They appeared in 9 NFC Championship games over that span and set records for offensive efficiency and defensive toughness. By the time Steve Young took over in the 1990s, the dynasty had evolved but remained dominant. In the 1994 season, Young won MVP. Rice had another legendary campaign, and the 49ers captured their 5th Lombardi trophy in a blowout win over the Chargers. The San Francisco dynasty was built on innovation, consistency, and legendary talent, and they left a blueprint for every modern passing offense in the league. Kansas City Chiefs, 2018 to present. The Kansas City Chiefs are the NFL's current dynasty, built around the most dangerous quarterback-coach duo in the league, Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. The run began in 2018, Mahomes' first season as a starter. He threw for over 5,000 yards and 50 touchdowns, instantly winning MVP and announcing that the Chiefs were entering a new era. With Reid's offensive genius and Mahomes' generational talent, Kansas City became the team everyone else had to chase. In 2019, they completed the breakthrough. The Chiefs erased double-digit deficits in 3 straight playoff games, capped by a Super Bowl 54 victory over the 49ers. Mahomes was named Super Bowl MVP, and Kansas City had its first title in 50 years. Since then, the dynasty has only grown. The Chiefs have reached 6 straight AFC championship games, won 4 AFC titles, and collected 3 Super Bowls in 5 years, 2019, 2022, 2023. Mahomes has added 2 MVP awards and 3 Super Bowl MVP to his resume, while tight end Travis Kelce has become one of the greatest playoff performers in history. What makes this dynasty unique is adaptability. They won early with explosive big play offenses, then transitioned to a more patient, methodical style when defenses adjusted. Even in seasons where they lost stars like Tyreek Hill, they found ways to win. Reid's creativity, Mahomes' playmaking, and a steadily improving defense have kept them at the top. The Chiefs are still in their prime, and with Mahomes only in his late 20s, the dynasty shows no signs of slowing down. Right now, Kansas City is building a run that could rival any dynasty in NFL history. Dallas Cowboys, 1991 to 1995. The Dallas Cowboys of the early 1990s were built like a machine, and for a 5-year stretch, nobody could stop them. After years of decline in the 1980s, the Cowboys rebuilt under head coach Jimmy Johnson and owner Jerry Jones. The foundation was the triplets: quarterback Troy Aikman, running back Emmitt Smith, and wide receiver Michael Irvin. Add in an elite offensive line led by Larry Allen, Eric Williams, and Mark Tuney, plus a relentless defense anchored by Charles Haley and Darren Woodson, and Dallas became the NFL's most complete team. From 1991 to 1995, the Cowboys won 3 Super Bowls in 4 years and posted 4 straight NFC Championship appearances. They dominated with balance: Emmitt Smith's power running, Aikman's efficiency, Irvin's big playability, and a defense that thrived in big moments. Their peak came in Super Bowl 28, when Smith capped off an MVP season with a legendary postseason run, carrying the offense through injuries and pressure. He remains the NFL's all-time leading rusher, a testament to his consistency. The dynasty wasn't without drama. Jimmy Johnson left after back-to-back championships in a power struggle with Jerry Jones, and Barry Switzer took over. Even with that shift, the talent was too overwhelming to slow down, and Dallas added another Lombardi trophy in 1995. By the late 1990s, age, free agency, and off-field distractions tore the dynasty apart. But for the first half of the decade, the Cowboys were the NFL's standard. Oakland, Los Angeles Raiders, 1967 to 1985. The Raiders of the late 1960s through the mid-1980s built one of the NFL's most unique dynasties, a team defined by toughness, swagger, and a rebellious identity. Under owner Al Davis, the Raiders lived by the motto, "Just win, baby." And during this era, they did exactly that. From 1967 to 1985, the Raiders posted 16 straight winning seasons, won 3 Super Bowls, and became one of the league's most feared franchises. It started with the AFL-NFL merger. Led by quarterback Darryl LaMonica, Oakland reached Super Bowl II in 1967. By the 1970s, the team was stacked with talent. Ken Stabler, Fred Biletnikoff, and Dave Casper. On defense, names like Jack Tatum, Ted Hendricks, and Howie Long struck fear into opponents. The Raiders won their first Super Bowl in the 1976 season, knocking off the Minnesota Vikings in dominant fashion. Their next title came in 1980 with quarterback Jim Plunkett, a reclamation project who led the Raiders to become the first wild-card team to ever win the Super Bowl. In 1982, the team relocated to Los Angeles, and it didn't take long for them to win again. Powered by running back Marcus Allen, the Raiders crushed Washington in Super Bowl XVIII, highlighted by Allen's 74-yard touchdown run that remains one of the most iconic plays in NFL history. The Raiders' dynasty wasn't built on polish. It was built on intimidation, risk-taking, and a culture that embraced cast-offs and turned them into stars. They weren't always the NFL's most consistent team, but from the late 60s to the mid-80s, they were always dangerous. The Raiders became more than a team. They were a cultural force, embodying toughness, individuality, and the idea that winning forgives everything. Dallas Cowboys, 1970 to 1979. The Dallas Cowboys of the 1970s were the NFL's first modern dynasty, combining innovation, star power, and consistency at a level no other team matched in that decade. Led by head coach Tom Landry, the Cowboys were built on balance. Landry's trademark fedora and stoic presence on the sideline became iconic, but his real genius was schematic. His flex defense and innovative offensive systems put Dallas ahead of the league strategically. The roster was loaded. Roger Staubach became the franchise quarterback, earning the nickname Captain Comeback for his poise in big moments. On offense, he had weapons like Drew Pearson, Tony Dorsett, and Bob Hayes, the Olympic sprinter who stretched defenses vertically. On defense, the Doomsday Defense featured Randy White, Ed Too Tall Jones, Mel Renfro, and Harvey Martin, a unit that could dominate games on its own. The Cowboys appeared in 5 Super Bowls during the 1970s, winning 2 championships, Super Bowl VI and Super Bowl XII. They were also the first team to appear in 7 NFC championship games in a single decade. More than wins, though, Dallas became America's team. Their games were nationally televised, their players became household names, and their cheerleaders and star logo became symbols of the NFL itself. The dynasty didn't win every Super Bowl, but their consistency was unmatched. From 1970 to 1979, they were always in the conversation, and they built the identity of the Cowboys franchise that still carries weight today. Washington football team, 1982 to 1991. In the 1980s, Washington built one of the NFL's most underrated dynasties, a team that thrived on depth, toughness, and adaptability. Led by head coach Joe Gibbs, Washington won 3 Super Bowls in 10 years, each with a different starting quarterback. Joe Theismann in 1982, Doug Williams in 1987, and Mark Rypien in 1991. No other franchise has ever done that. a testament to Gibbs's system and the balance of his roster. The foundation of the dynasty was the offensive line, known as the Hogs. Russ Grimm, Joe Jacoby, Mark May, Jeff Bostic, and others dominated the trenches, giving Washington a physical identity that wore down defenses. Behind them, running backs like John Riggins, Ernest Biner, and Gerald Riggs punished opponents, while receivers like Art Monk, Gary Clark, and Ricky Sanders gave the offense explosive balance. Defensively, Washington was built on toughness and opportunism. Players like Darrell Green, one of the fastest corners ever, and Charles Mann kept the unit strong even as rosters turned over. Each championship team looked different. In 1982, it was Riggins carrying the load during a strike-shortened season. In 1987, Doug Williams became the first black quarterback to win a Super Bowl, throwing 4 touchdowns in one quarter of the big game. And in 1991, the team went 14-2 and steamrolled through the playoffs, often called one of the most complete teams of all time. From 1982 to 1991, Washington wasn't always flashy, but they were consistently among the best. 3 Lombardi trophies in a decade put them firmly in the NFL's Dynasty Club. Miami Dolphins, 1970 to 1974. The Miami Dolphins of the early 1970s built one of the NFL's shortest but most perfect dynasties. Head coach Don Shula arrived in 1970, bringing discipline and structure to a young franchise. Within 3 years, he turned them into champions. Powered by a dominant ground game, an unshakable defense, and smart, efficient quarterback play, the Dolphins won back-to-back Super Bowls in 1972 and 1973. Their 1972 team remains unmatched in league history, the only team to ever complete a perfect season, finishing 17-0. Quarterbacks Bob Grease and backup Earl Morrall managed the offense, while the no-name defense, led by Nick Buonaconti and Manny Fernandez, smothered opponents. On the ground, Larry Csonka, Jim Kick, and Mercury Morris formed the most punishing rushing trio the league had ever seen. The following year, they proved it wasn't a fluke. In 1973, Miami went 12-2 and won another Super Bowl, this time in dominant fashion, outscoring their playoff opponents, 85-33. Csonka earned Super Bowl MVP, and Shula cemented his legacy as one of the greatest coaches of all time. By 1974, the run had ended, but not before Miami had established itself as one of the league's greatest dynasties. 2 Super Bowls, 3 straight AFC titles, and a perfect season that still stands alone. The Miami Dolphins of the early 70s were efficient, physical, and unbeatable at their peak. Their perfection is why this dynasty is still celebrated today. Chicago Bears, 1940s. The Chicago Bears of the 1940s were the NFL's first true dynasty, a team that shaped the league's identity in its early years. Led by legendary head coach George Halas, the Bears were built on physicality and innovation. Halas embraced new strategies, including the T formation, which used a balanced offensive line and a quarterback under center, a design that revolutionized football. With Sid Luckman at quarterback, the system became unstoppable. The dominance showed up in the championships. From 1940 to 1946, the Bears won 4 NFL titles: 1940, 1941, 1943, 1946, and appeared in 5 title games overall. Their 1940 NFL championship win over Washington still stands as one of the most lopsided games ever, a 73-0 blowout that remains the largest margin of victory in league history. The roster was stacked with Hall of Famers. Luckman was the league's first great passing quarterback. Bronco Nagurski and George McAfee brought power and speed to the backfield. Bulldog Turner anchored the defense, while players like Danny Fortman and Clyde Bulldog Turner gave Chicago a complete team on both sides of the ball. Their style of play made the forward pass a bigger weapon, and their defensive toughness set the tone for what Chicago would be known for decades later: the Monsters of the Midway. The 1940s, Bears laid the foundation for the modern NFL Cleveland Browns, 1946 to 1955. The Cleveland Browns of the late 1940s and early 1950s were one of the most dominant dynasties in professional football history, even if they're sometimes overlooked today. Led by head coach Paul Brown, the team was revolutionary in its approach. Brown introduced modern concepts like film study, playbooks, and full-time assistant coaches, innovations that reshaped football forever. On the field, his teams were disciplined, organized, and ahead of their time. The centerpiece was quarterback Otto Graham, who may be the most underrated winner in NFL history. With Graham under center, the Browns reached the championship game in all 10 seasons he played, winning 7 titles between the AAFC and NFL. He could run, he could pass, and he was the perfect leader for Brown's structured system. The dynasty began in the AAFC, All-America Football Conference, where the Browns won all 4 league titles from 1946 to 1949. When the league folded, skeptics doubted how Cleveland would fare against established NFL powers. They answered immediately by winning the NFL championship in their very first season, 1950. Over the next 5 years, they kept returning to the title game, winning 3 more championships: 1950, 1954, 1955. Alongside Graham were stars like Marion Motley, one of the most powerful backs of his era, and Lou Groza, the Hall of Fame tackle and kicker known as the Toe. Their record of sustained success, 10 straight championship appearances, has never been matched. Baltimore Colts, 1958 to 1971. The Baltimore Colts carved out one of the NFL's early dynasties, built on toughness, innovation, and one of the greatest quarterbacks in football history. Led by head coach Weeb Ewbank and quarterback Johnny Unitas, the Colts became national icons in 1958 with their sudden death overtime win over the New York Giants in the NFL championship game. Often called the greatest game ever played, it was the first nationally televised NFL title and is credited with sparking the league's surge in popularity. The Colts backed it up the next year, winning another championship in 1959. Unitas, with his cool leadership and rocket arm, revolutionized the passing game. He thrived with weapons like Raymond Berry, who set standards for route running and precision, and Lenny Moore, a versatile threat who could run or catch with equal danger. By the mid-1960s, the Colts transitioned to a new coach in Don Shula, who kept them among the league's elite. They went 13-1 in 1968, behind quarterback Earl Morrall, winning the NFL championship before suffering a stunning upset to the Jets in Super Bowl III, a loss that reshaped the NFL's image of the AFL. But the dynasty wasn't finished. In 1970, with Unitas still in the mix and a dominant defense, the Colts rebounded to win Super Bowl V in a slugfest against the Dallas Cowboys. It marked the franchise's second official NFL title of the modern era, and cemented their place in history. From 1958 through 1971, the Colts were a fixture at the top of the league. They produced legendary players, helped usher pro football into the television age, and left a lasting mark as one of the NFL's most important dynasties. St. Louis Rams, 1999 to 2001. Few dynasties burned as brightly, or as quickly, as the St. Louis Rams at the turn of the millennium. The story began in 1999 when an unknown backup quarterback named Kurt Warner stepped in after Trent Green's injury. Surrounded by talent, Warner ran an offense that instantly became legendary, the greatest show on turf. With Marshall Faulk in the backfield, Isaac Bruce and Torrey Holt out wide, and an aggressive Mike Martz passing system, the Rams redefined what offensive football could look like. Warner threw for 4,353 yards and 41 touchdowns that season. Faulk won Offensive Player of the Year, and St. Louis finished 13-3. They capped it with a Super Bowl 34 win over the Titans, remembered for the tackle, Mike Jones stopping Kevin Dyson 1 yard short of the goal line as time expired. In 2000, the offense somehow got even better, scoring 540 points, but defensive struggles kept them from repeating. In 2001, the Rams roared back, going 14-2 and reaching another Super Bowl. Warner won his second MVP, Faulk won his third straight Offensive Player of the Year, and the Rams seemed unstoppable. But in the Super Bowl, they were stunned by the New England Patriots in Tom Brady's first championship run. It marked the end of their peak. Injuries, roster changes, and defensive regression quickly brought the run to a close. From 1999 to 2001, though, the Rams revolutionized football. Their speed, precision, and creativity made them must-watch TV, and their impact on modern spread offenses is still felt today. The greatest show on turf wasn't the longest dynasty, but for 3 years, it was the most electrifying in NFL history.